Have you ever observed that those around you start to feel uneasy as you start to change for the real? Of course, they are not outspoken. They will cover it up with jokes, advise masquerading as worry, or that uncomfortable quiet when you discuss something more serious. Under reality, though, the situation is straightforward. Their comfort zone is under danger due to your mental development. Furthermore, nobody enjoys having to face their own complacency. Maybe this is exactly what you are going through at the moment. You began to act and think differently, and you may have even begun to doubt things you had previously taken for granted. Suddenly, you started to feel condemned, misunderstood, and alone. This is the cost of developing a strong mind, which is what no one told you and what Nietzsche knew better than anyone. Not just any strength, but a strength that is so genuine and powerful that it causes discomfort in other people. It frightens them. Without uttering a single word, it reveals the frailty of people who continue to live their lives automatically. However, why does this occur? Because collective mediocrity is threatened by a truly powerful mind. This is what Nietzsche was quite clear about. You become dangerous when you choose to think for yourself, develop your own values, and give up the cozy illusion of prefabricated truths. Dangerous to others, dangerous to the system, and most importantly, dangerous to the person you used to be. This is a call video. An obstacle. It's not for people who are comfortable or who are looking for simple solutions. It is designed for you if you are sick of being held captive by your own fears, feel like you are about to have an internal breakdown, and are prepared to create something that no one can take away. A mind that is uncontrollable. A mind that is frightening because it is unyielding. Therefore, stay if you feel prepared for this path, one that is difficult, lonely, and completely transformational. Nietzsche's teachings certainly challenge you, but they can also liberate you. You won't think the same way again after this. Nietzsche was more than just a thinker. He operated on the human spirit as a surgeon, someone with the guts to gaze into the depths of life, and not just confront it, but plunge into it. And he discovered the wellspring of his genuine strength right there in that abyss, in that inner instability that many people shun. Because according to Nietzsche, human transformation does not occur in an environment of harmony, stability, or order. It hurts. It's autumn. It's a mess. He said, you need to have a chaos inside you to give birth to a dancing star. This is a clinical diagnostic, not a poetic metaphor. It implies that you must give up the naive belief that comfort, low-cost motivation, or positive affirmations can help you develop an unbreakable mind. When you face hardship head-on without running away, when you stop hoping for a simpler existence and begin wishing for a stronger one, that is when true strength is formed. Consider the periods when you developed the most. Was it when everything was well, or when you were broken, lost, and unsure of your course, and you had to start again from scratch? According to Nietzsche, suffering is what propels existence rather than a mistake. He viewed suffering as a technique rather than as something to be romanticized. And you start to create something uncommon, an unbreakable spirit, if you can alter your connection with suffering, failure, and loneliness. And it is there that you start to disrupt the planet, because you will learn to live in turmoil, even if most people run from it. Greatness will be created by you while others plead for normalcy. But in order to undergo this change, you must brutally reject all of the lessons you were taught about strength. Smiling constantly is not a sign of strength. Fake emotional control is not the point. To be strong means to endure the intolerable, and to emerge from the experience even more perilous. However, Nietzsche was aware that chaos is insufficient on its own. If you don't have an anchor, an inner center, it can ruin you. Because of this, we shall discuss the pivotal point in Nietzschean philosophy in the following section, when he kills God and places the entire burden of existential responsibility on you. Because the universe must emerge within you when there is no longer a sky to gaze upon. Nietzsche wasn't celebrating when he said, "God is dead," but rather warning. Many people today are still unaware of this warning. He destroyed the illusion, not a divine being in and of itself. The delusion that everything is being handled by a higher power. The delusion that someone from outside has provided a purpose, a predetermined meaning, or a plan. Any justification ends with the death of God. And it's scary, because it was simple to delegate responsibility for your life until that point. The idea that everything happens for a reason and that suffering is a necessary component of a divine design was consoling. That everything will ultimately be justified by a higher good. This curtain is ripped away by Nietzsche with violence. You are alone, he adds, staring you in the face. No prefabricated meaning exists. You are the creator now. And that's when the real process of building a strong mind starts. Because when most individuals discover they are on their own in the face of chaos, without a guide, without assurances, and without someone to blame, they tend to crumble. However, those who are brave enough to face this without losing their composure start to create an unbreakable awareness. Nietzsche plunges you into the depths of radical freedom with the death of God. Commandments should not be followed. Instead, values should be created. You have to go above and beyond yourself, not follow orders. It is the beginning of violent independence. And the weight comes with it. Now, everything is up to you. Absolution is no longer available. Salvation is no longer available. It's either you sink or you rise. The trick, though, is that same freedom that makes you feel afraid is also your greatest source of strength. Something within of you awakens when you realize that no one will come to your rescue. A fire that, despite your bleeding, forces you to get up. This compels you to think and feel for yourself, to behave based on your own judgment rather than someone else's opinion. Nietzsche lays the foundation for something even more ambitious, the birth of a new way of being, by rupturing the use of existential crutches. A particular kind of person who does not follow the communal norms, who doesn't require permission or approval, a person who develops their own moral code. Someone lives as a creator and transcends their own boundaries. A creature that makes the weak face their true selves, which makes them fearful. This creature is named. Nietzsche referred to it as the Overman or Übermensch. At this point, we shall discuss him. Let's get started. Nietzsche rejected the idea that humanity evolved slowly and passively. He supported creative destruction, extreme change, and rupture. And for that reason, he came up with the concept of the Übermensch or Overman. It has nothing to do with superheroes. It's not a mystically gifted person. Everything that ties the average man together, guilt, obedience, herd morality, and the need for approval, has been conquered by the Übermensch. The Übermensch doesn't try to fit in. He doesn't request approval to be here. Even if doing so puts him at odds with everyone else, he establishes his own internal rules and lives by them. And for that very reason, his thinking becomes indestructible. Because it isn't based on what other people think. It can authenticate itself without outside approval. It can sustain itself. It is fueled by its own drive to power, the innate desire to mold reality to fit its own vision. The Übermensch does not adjust to the world, and this is the main argument. He gives the world purpose. He pursues greatness rather than comfort. He doesn't inquire, is this permitted? Is this worthy of me? He wonders. And everything is altered by this change in viewpoint. Because your entire way of thinking, acting, and feeling changes when you begin to see yourself as a creator rather than a servant. The issue is that it takes sacrifice to become this kind of person. part of you that still cries out for acceptance will have to die. You'll have to deal with the hurt of not fitting in. The burden of creating your identity from the ground up will fall on you. There won't be any assurances, congratulations, or audience applause. And it's too much for most people to manage. They quit before they begin. They retreat to the security of prefabricated doctrines, rules, and beliefs that were penned for them by someone else. Nietzsche was aware that the road to the Übermensch is a lonely one. He was marginalized himself, misunderstood, labeled insane, and cut off from the society he was attempting to free. But he discovered his independence in that seclusion. You must realize that the more powerful you're thinking, the more you separate yourself from the majority. You disrupt more the higher you go. Because it necessitates destroying everything that is not yours, the process of creating the Übermensch is the most violent and transforming one anyone can experience. Everything that a sick civilization has forced upon you. By a culture that penalizes authenticity and favors conformity. And you don't start building until you've destroyed. However, this construction does not take place in the middle of the crowd. It takes place in quiet, in withdrawal, in the profound isolation between the powerful and the weak. And for that reason, we shall explore the most underappreciated yet potent element of this journey, the solitude of the strong, in the following section. The fact is that you will need to learn how to walk alone if you want to become unshakable. Few people are prepared for that. If there's one thing about the road to mental toughness that no one tells you, it's that the more powerful you are, the more alone you feel. And it's not because you choose to isolate yourself. Rather, it's because the world begins to struggle with how to handle you. Nietzsche was rather explicit about this. The free spirit, the one who thinks independently, rejects conventional wisdom, and does not accept simple facts, invariably separates from the herd. And it pains to be separated. However, that suffering is essential because true progress necessitates room, and you cannot develop when constrained by other people's expectations. The majority of people live in an invisible herd where everyone's thoughts and behaviors are monitored by how others respond to them. Because there are people around you, you've been accustomed to strolling in a group, thinking like the group, and feeling safe. However, Nietzsche suggests the reverse. He tosses you into the desert after tearing you away from that solace. There is no clapping, no acclaim, and no guidance in that desert. You alone with your uncertainties, traumas, anxieties, and will to give up. And the true test starts then. Since what will the majority of people do? They'll dash back. They'll put on their masks and conceal once more. They will act as though they had no feelings, thoughts, or vision. However, you will need to stay if you genuinely want to become someone that no one can break. You will have to put up with the silence that exposes your true self. According to Nietzsche, the individual must constantly fight to avoid being overpowered by the tribe. You will frequently feel alone and occasionally afraid if you try. But the cost of owning oneself is never too high. The possession of oneself is the essence, the most significant and uncommon accomplishment somebody can make. Because no one else can control you when you are actually in control of yourself. Your value is determined by no one else. And you cannot be brought down by anyone else. However, the burden of loneliness accompanies this possession. People will leave you. People will misinterpret you. You will be accused of being conceited, odd, and aloof. They'll make an effort to reshape you. They will accuse you of being cold, insensitive, and insane. However, it is the cost of not being tamed. It's the cost of not having to be praised. It is the cost of not living to satisfy the demands of others. The harsh reality is that you are not prepared for freedom if you cannot tolerate loneliness. Because true freedom requires giving up comforting illusions, emotional support systems, and practical friendships. Nietzsche therefore viewed solitude as a privilege, a battlefield where the real self can at last show itself. However, this exalted soul and unfettered intellect don't walk by themselves. It starts to see things that others miss. The second unavoidable consequence that follows is having to deal with mediocrity. Because the collective mediocrity senses when you begin to become powerful and responds. The danger of collective mediocrity is precisely what we will discuss next. Because people who are the same are not sought after by the world. Those who dare to stand out are pursued by it. Nietzsche had no fear of declared oppressors, dictators, or authoritarian rulers. It was the subtle and destructive force of collective mediocrity that he feared and condemned with philosophical venom. That unseen mechanism that maintains everyone's fair playing field. Those who dare to think differently are punished by that. That disguises cowardice as virtue and rewards compliance. Nietzsche believed that true tyranny did not originate from above. It originates on the sides. The bunch that insists you stay tiny so they don't have to grow is the source of it. And that's precisely what occurs when you start to stand out. Your presence becomes more awkward, your spirit becomes firmer, and your mind becomes sharper. Not because you're doing something incorrectly, but because you're doing something uncommon, you start to disrupt. The mold is being broken by you. And people who break molds are despised by society. Because individual brilliance reveals the darkness of everyday existence, collective mediocrity cannot tolerate it. This is what Nietzsche referred to as the slave morality, a morality created by people who chose to invert values because they were unable to attain greatness. They turned independence into coldness, ambition into selfishness, and power into conceit. They thereby established a moral code that defends the poor and denounces the powerful. But don't get me wrong, it's not out of sympathy. It's motivated by resentment, because saving the vulnerable is not what they want. They desire the destruction of the powerful. That's why they start attacking you as you try to free yourself, sometimes overtly, sometimes covertly, with stares, silence, and irony. However, the message is unambiguous. Return to the group. We feel insignificant because of you. And by being yourself, you are inadvertently. Nietzsche recognized that the majority of people are trapped in a suffocating uniformity. A life molded by obedience, guilt, and terror. Furthermore, anyone who challenges this state is viewed as a danger. Don't be duped though. Mediocrity uses numbers, agreement, and the weight of repetition to attack rather than physical force. It will attempt to cast doubt on you. It will lead you to believe that you are incorrect for not fitting in. It will employ every social tool at its disposal to make you bow down, from humiliation to isolation. Many people give up at this point because they can't stand being the odd, the challenging, or the conceited. Nietzsche, however, would call you indispensable, because even if the world is full with manufactured needs, recycled ideas, and comfy realities, it is the strong individual who creates the discomfort that is required for anything new to emerge. Your uniqueness is the catalyst for change. However, resistance is also directed at it. Being independent, strong, and free-thinking are all acts of resistance to the general mediocrity of society. It also has to be prepared, just like any other war. It needs weapons, mental weapons, not physical ones. And in the last section, it is just what we shall discuss. Because cultivating a mind that is so powerful that it is frightening comes at a very steep cost. However, no one can take away the reward either. You will learn about the cost and strength of becoming indestructible in the following section. You've come this far. That alone distinguishes you from most. At the first provocation, the majority of individuals would have closed this video. At the first sign of discomfort, they would have fled. As soon as they realized this was a call to action rather than ego-stroking content, they would have shut it off. An exhortation to those who are prepared to shed the cozy delusion and confront truth head-on. Because developing a mind that is so powerful that it is feared is a renunciation rather than merely a decision. You lose. Friendships founded on superficiality will be lost. You will miss out on opportunities that need to be submitted. You will no longer be able to be satisfied with little. However, you receive something invaluable in return: presence, clarity, and honesty. You'll start to realize that the majority of folks are asleep, and that you're frighteningly lucid, that people shudder at your firmness, that many people's presence is louder than yours. It is not an external source of strength. Books on self-help do not teach it. It is also not acquired by using prefabricated slogans or meaningless affirmations. It is buried in the depths of the spirit, in the quiet of dark nights, in the decisions that no one notices. It is the outcome of an internal conflict between your former self and your current self. And there is no end to this battle, because those who have won are not the ones who are actually powerful. They are the ones who keep fighting when they have the opportunity to stop. Creating followers was not Nietzsche's goal. His goal was to cause earthquakes within himself. Stop crawling for his approval, please. To quit pleading for purpose. Should quit looking for things that can only be created with blood, sweat, and awareness in pre-made systems. He desired for you to become dangerous, but not in a violent way. So uncommon that people are forced to face what they are avoiding when they look in the mirror only because of you. I now want to extend an invitation to you to take a step that will strengthen this process. Post a truth you're sick of keeping hidden in the comments section. A viewpoint you're scared to express. An idea that embodies your true self yet leaves you feeling alone. Claiming your voice and demonstrating your presence are steps in the process. Declaring that you will no longer bend is even more important. And if this film moved you or a part of you was roused, don't stop here. This video is as vital as the next one. Maybe even more so. This trip continues. And if you've read this far, you're aware that you're not only curiously watching. Something has already started to alter inside of you, which is why you are here. Thus, continue. You're not by yourself. You're just ahead. And that is both frightening and freeing, my love.